Welcome to Geo Capitalist, where we decode global wealth one power shift at a time. Go grab your coffee and let's get into it. Because what you're about to hear, no one in the mainstream is really saying it out loud. It started with silence. A name disappeared from a NASA shortlist. A contract went unsigned. A launch window closed without comment. And then, the message became clear. Elon Musk is no longer playing by America's rules. He's not just building in China or selling to India. He's systematically rerouting his empire away from Washington and into the waiting arms of BRICS nations. But the quiet part isn't what he's doing. It's what the US is doing in return. A SpaceX ally was stripped from NASA. Defense contracts slashed, satellite access revoked, all while Tesla expands in Shanghai. Starlink rolls out in Brazil, and Musk's AI slips quietly into China's power grid. This isn't business as usual, it's a realignment of influence, and it might be the biggest unspoken breakup in tech history. So today, we're breaking it down. Why Musk is ditching the US for China and BRICS, and why nobody's talking about it. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us stay independent, global, and grounded in the facts. Now, let's make sense of this together. It didn't begin with a press conference. It began with removal. In Q2 of 2025, a name quietly disappeared from NASA's future leadership. Jared Isaacman, billionaire, astronaut, and close Musk collaborator. He wasn't just a SpaceX customer, he led Inspiration and the Polaris missions. He had Elon's trust, and for a moment, he had Trump's nomination to lead NASA. Until he didn't. Within days of Musk publicly criticizing a sweeping fiscal bill, Isaacman's nomination was yanked. No explanation, just gone. And, in his place, Sean Duffy, a former congressman, now transportation secretary, and a known critic of Musk's growing power. Behind the scenes, the Department of Defense was already scaling back ties. Starlink override requests were left unanswered. Tesla was dropped from federal EV advisory boards. SpaceX's name vanished from launch manifests tied to Pentagon payloads. It didn't look like policy. It looked like a reset. The US wasn't just backing away, it was cutting Musk out. And yet, while doors were closing in Washington, they were opening across the rest of the world. While the US was freezing Musk out, BRICS nations were pulling him in. India fast-tracked Starlink deployment across 5 states, no US approvals required. Brazil signed a $2.3 billion EV infrastructure deal with Tesla, with full sovereignty over the grid. South Africa cleared Starlink for national emergency response use, classifying it as critical communications infrastructure. These aren't private partnerships, they're national integrations. And more were coming. In China, Tesla's auto bidder AI quietly received clearance to balance energy loads across Guangdong's industrial grid, bypassing US AI export controls entirely. In Russia, procurement documents hinted at interest in low Earth orbit systems with defense-grade capacity, widely interpreted as Starlink, without naming it directly. These deals weren't announced with fanfare. They were executed through filings, permits, and quiet diplomacy. The kind Musk thrives in. Because what BRICS nations offer isn't just access, it's autonomy. No congressional hearings, no Pentagon override clauses, no FTC compliance traps, just a green light to build. And for Musk, that's not just attractive. It's liberating. So let's go back to that NASA removal. Because the Isaacman case wasn't an isolated move. It was a signal. Jared Isaacman isn't a political operative. He's a private astronaut who spent billions on Musk's rockets and helped fund SpaceX's first all-civilian missions. He didn't just fly on SpaceX hardware, he demonstrated that Starlink could sustain encrypted communications in orbit. He stress-tested life support, software, and orbital control outside of NASA oversight. His missions, Inspiration and Polaris Dawn, were not just symbolic space tourism. They were field tests for a commercialized future where state approval isn't required. And that future was made possible by SpaceX. By every account, Isaac Mann was one of the most technically prepared civilian astronauts to ever step into orbit, and one of the few with direct, ongoing involvement in global Starlink deployment. He was funding science payloads, building multi-country partnerships, and pushing boundaries that even government agencies were hesitant to explore. And yet, when Musk stepped out of line politically, Isaac Mann was cut. His nomination to lead NASA wasn't just rescinded, it was buried. Not paused, not delayed, erased. And the replacement? Sean Duffy, a political loyalist, not a space strategist, who had openly criticized Musk's grip on satellite launches and raised questions about Starlink's refusal to grant override access during sensitive operations. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. On one side, someone who had flown in Musk's rockets, scaled global infrastructure with him, and advanced private exploration. On the other, someone whose primary value was not being Musk's ally.
Isaac Mann himself later admitted, "This was never really about me. This was about my association with Elon."
And there it is. Because what you're seeing isn't just a business shift, it's a geopolitical divorce. It's a message sent not through sanctions or subpoenas, but through silence. If you're too close to Musk, you're not invited to the table anymore. And for companies with embedded ties to SpaceX, that silence carries real risk. Because when proximity to innovation becomes disqualifying, the future doesn't wait for approval. It relocates. Comment below. Is this smart strategy from Musk? Or the start of a wider split between the U.S. and its most powerful entrepreneur? While the U.S. tightens its grip on AI exports and imposes new compliance hurdles, China is doing the opposite, making it easier for Elon Musk to embed deeper into its infrastructure. And they're doing it the way Beijing prefers, through policy precision, quiet channels, and selective privilege. In May 2025, regulators in Guangdong province approved the deployment of Tesla's AutoBidder AI software to manage load balancing across the provincial power grid. There was no press release, no state media celebration, just filings, discreetly published in commercial energy bulletins, confirming that a U.S. origin algorithm would begin optimizing real-time electricity flows across some of the country's most industrialized regions. For Western analysts, it looked like an anomaly, but for those familiar with Chinese regulatory patterns, it was something else, a backdoor invitation. AutoBidder was originally designed for fleet energy optimization, adjusting when and how stored energy is deployed across electric vehicles and battery banks. But when retrofitted for utility-scale infrastructure, it becomes a powerful grid management tool. It makes real-time decisions on power flow, peak demand mitigation, and battery dispatch, functions deeply intertwined with national energy security. And yet somehow it cleared approvals that would block almost any other Western company. How? By filing under a narrow category, non-vehicle commercial energy use. That specific designation allowed Tesla to bypass newly enforced dual-use restrictions imposed by U.S. export authorities, rules designed to keep advanced AI out of foreign critical systems. Bloomberg later confirmed this was the first Western AI tool legally embedded in a Chinese grid environment in 2025. Treasury officials in the U.S. launched a preliminary review, questioning whether this software might qualify as dual use. But Musk's legal team pushed back, framing it as commercially standard, comparable to power apps used in Europe or Japan. And China's regulators? They didn't raise a single red flag. Because here's the strategic nuance. China doesn't want to control Elon Musk. It wants to harness him, offer land, offer data exemptions, offer scale, let him run, but only within the system. Musk gets to build fast. Beijing gets advanced technology on tap without having to create it themselves. One Asia-Pacific analyst put it bluntly, Beijing doesn't need to control Elon. It just needs him to stay productive and stay in China. And for Musk, who's always moved where permission isn't needed, that isn't a barrier. It's an operating model. In a world of closed doors, China is offering him a key, not to lead the system, but to thrive quietly inside it. Remember when Starlink was considered a jewel of American innovation? Low Earth orbit satellites, powering disaster recovery, battlefield communications, and global broadband, all under U.S. oversight. For years, it was viewed as a technological extension of national policy, a digital backbone for humanitarian relief, government response, and strategic deterrence. It was fast, flexible, and unregulated enough to outpace legacy telecoms, but still assumed to be under Washington's umbrella. Not anymore. In 2025, Starlink became something else entirely, a decentralized infrastructure network serving global governments, without U.S. supervision. It started with a denial. SpaceX refused override access to Starlink during a classified regional conflict, a decision that blindsided Pentagon officials. Within weeks, the Department of Defense pulled over $4 billion in procurement contracts, assuming that economic pressure would bring Musk back into alignment. But the vacuum didn't last long. India stepped in, expanding Starlink across 5 states for educational and disaster communications. Brazil folded Starlink into a $1.1 billion broadband and remote learning rollout. South Africa granted it critical national utility status, elevating it to the level of water, power, and emergency networks. Even Russia, in leaked procurement documents, expressed interest in non-state LEO systems with tactical-grade bandwidth. They didn't name Starlink directly, but the implication was obvious. Starlink no longer answers to Washington. It isn't an arm of American soft power. It's not a tool. It's a platform, mobile, borderless, and loyal only to its own deployment strategy. Its strength isn't just speed or coverage, it's flexibility in sovereignty. Countries can integrate it without needing to negotiate with a superpower. They just need to deal with the company.
One defense analyst summed it up perfectly. Musk didn't take Starlink from the US, he took it global.
And in doing so, he set a precedent with ripple effects far beyond satellites. He introduced a new category of infrastructure, high-performance systems that move faster than diplomacy, deploy wider than alliances, and operate independently of traditional oversight. When platforms become stateless, the very concept of geopolitical control starts to erode. And Starlink? It may be the first of many. Musk didn't just reroute contracts. He rerouted entire ecosystems. In May 2025, Tesla formally withdrew from all U.S.-funded EV corridor initiatives, halting projects that were once seen as core to America's electrification strategy. At the same time, Starlink paused all Pentagon briefings, while SpaceX stopped responding to classified payload requests, a decision that left defense liaisons scrambling for alternatives. On the surface, these moves looked like pushback. In reality, they were final steps in a long-engineered realignment. The groundwork had already been laid. For more than a year, Tesla's legal teams had been restructuring international operations to reduce exposure to U.S. regulatory risk. Key battery materials like lithium and cobalt, previously routed through Nevada and California, were shifted to South African and Malaysian ports. Documentation for cell manufacturing was migrated to Singapore. Brazil confirmed a full-scale EV charging network rollout, one that required no joint venture with U.S. partners, no data reporting, and no intellectual property sharing. Then came China. Tesla was awarded expansion rights for its Shanghai Gigafactory, but with an unprecedented twist, exemptions from China's strict data localization rules. That means performance and diagnostics data, typically required to be stored on government-controlled servers, could remain on Tesla infrastructure. Not even Chinese brands like BYD enjoy that level of operational independence. No logos changed, no headlines were made. But the control center, the compliance architecture behind Tesla's growth, had been permanently relocated. The company's governance model now operated across jurisdictions, hedging against any single country's policies, sanctions, or political cycles. It was a quiet revolution in corporate risk strategy. As one Tesla executive told the Financial Times, "We're building a firewall against policy whiplash. Translation? We'll scale globally, but not under your rules. When regulatory oversight becomes friction, autonomy becomes the edge. And, in Musk's world, friction isn't just inconvenient, it's strategically unacceptable. So he built something else: a mobile supply chain, a distributed compliance network, an empire optimized not for loyalty, but for movement. The message is clear. If governments want to slow him down, they'll have to do it without leverage. Because the tools Musk needs to build, materials, software, infrastructure, even talent, are no longer tethered to any single flag. And that makes control a lot harder to enforce. By mid-2025, Musk's companies no longer operated like U.S. firms. They were global, fluid, and answerable only to function, not flag. Starlink was active in India, Brazil, and South Africa. Tesla's AI was running Chinese grid systems. SpaceX was launching international payloads, 40% of them non-US clients, and xAI was training language models out of data centers in the UAE. Governments took notice. Germany launched a Starlink dependency review. Japan delayed regulatory approval, citing command ambiguity. Australia flagged concerns over override capacity during conflict zones, but nobody banned the service. Why? Because the performance advantage is too strong. Faster, cheaper, more reliable. Musk isn't building tools. He's building infrastructure. And governments are choosing functionality over control. This isn't defiance. It's detachment. A new kind of power where platforms move freely and allegiance is optional. Elon Musk hasn't defected. He hasn't declared war on America. But he has done something even more disruptive. He's decoupled his empire from any single nation. And in doing so, he's rewritten the rules of global influence. Tesla, SpaceX, Starlink, and xAI are no longer tools of American soft power. They're mobile, sovereign, accountable only to themselves and their users. Washington can investigate, restrict, delay, but Musk builds elsewhere, where capital flows faster, where oversight is flexible, where innovation doesn't come with a subpoena. India, Brazil, South Africa, China. They're not just customers, they're co-builders of Musk's new infrastructure. And in a multipolar world, that might be the smartest move of all. Because if power is measured by control, then influence is now measured by access. And Musk has access everywhere, without asking for permission. If you found this breakdown valuable, watch our next video. It connects directly to what's unfolding. And don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us decode these global shifts without compromise. Let us know in the comments. Is Musk going global or going rogue? Either way, the world is watching. This was why Musk is ditching the US for China and BRICS, and nobody's talking about it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.